It's been one of those days, I guess, like the past 24 hours.
You are listening to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all the latest news, Overwatch League results, and mishaps in Overwatch. Here are your hosts, Totemly Drunk and Edinar.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Totemly Drunk, and tonight on episode 138, we'll be discussing the latest in Overwatch, Overwatch esports, see what's buzzing in this week's hot community topics, and of course, get everyone caught up to speed with all of the latest Overwatch League expansion team reveals, roster updates, all of that good stuff. But before I can do that and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us during our live show tonight on Twitch, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Edinar, and Edinar, deadline day has passed. We've got events on the horizon, Overwatch League players leaking full expansion team rosters, we got sign-ins being made, franchises being revealed. It's really been like this whirlwind week across competitive Overwatch. But before we can jump into that, how has your week been after being in Vegas for a little bit?
Well, it was fun, you know. I got back home yesterday, a little hungover. I slept a good 12 to 14 hours yesterday after I got back. But I had a lot of fun out there. I tried going to the esports arena. It was closed both days I was there.
Oof.
So that was weird. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'd go and have done anything, but I would have gone and like hung out, walked around it, inside it, and whatnot. But yeah, it was closed both days, so rip them, I guess. And you know, overall, it was just a good time. It's always fun to be out in Vegas. I did not go harass Slambo.
Oh, you should have.
He was sick.
This is true.
Is he sick? Yeah, no,
He is.
Spider's the one sick.
No, they're both sick.
Oh, Slambo. Okay. All right. Well, they're both sick. I was a little sick for different reasons. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
The Ferris wheel in Las Vegas with the open bar just gets me every time. But yeah, lots of good times. All the Christmas decorations were the highlight, though. So,
Of course.
how's your week been?
It's been busy. We got a lot of stuff kind of happening behind the scenes. I've been doing a ton of interviews with different Overwatch content creators for Overwatch Recall. 3 of which I've already released. We got like another like 4 or 5 kind of like in the backlog right now, ready to go for the release. So just a quick update on Recall. We're actually doing releases now on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which will primarily be the interview series that we're doing. So if you guys, stream Overwatch, if you do YouTube content, things like that, even if like you're a coach, like graphic designer, we're like branching out a lot more just outside of Overwatch podcasters. So I would love to sit down and chat with people. So that's like kind of blown up. So that's been keeping me busy. But I was also on The Point with Mel Curry this past weekend on Sunday to talk a little bit about Runaway, which, we got some stories to share in regards to that, which I've already brought up on some other podcasts. So it's been a good week, a solid week of content creation, and I'm looking forward to talking about some of the other odds and ends which we haven't had time to discuss yet, which includes some holiday stuff. So with that being said, let's jump into this week's news. So first off, we do know that Winter Wonderland is right around the corner. So Winter Wonderland returns to Overwatch starting on December 11th, and this event will be going through January 2nd. So what can we expect from Winter Wonderland this year? Well, Blizzard World will be getting the holiday treatment. They'll be decorated, more festive, similar to what they have done with both Hanamura and Kings Row in the past. Last year, we saw the event bring in the Yeti Hunt, which was added to the arcade mode after the no-fun game mode that was known as May's Snowball Offensive. And, I have to say, I love the winter event, but I've not been a fan of the game modes that they have brought in for it. I wasn't a fan of either the May iteration the first time or the Yeti Hunt. I didn't mind so much playing as Winston, as a Yeti in that case, but like it really hasn't been something that I've gone out and played like more than once for that initial loot box. And it doesn't look like we're gonna get a new game mode added to this year's event, so there is that. But we can expect, just like always with the event, we'll get some new holiday themed skins, we'll get some new cosmetics, and we have only gotten like one tease outside of like the Junkrat thing that was on one of the Jinx new t-shirts that they had. And we saw Twitter, with the Overwatch account, unveil a new legendary skin for Zarya, which is a snowboard theme. They kind of like labeled it as positively fursome. So you have Zarya, who is like rocking this blue-toned snow set. She has like a bear hat, and then like on her backpack you can see like a bear keychain, like a bear sticker like plastered on her weapon, and then her weapon just so happens to be a light pink and blue. So we kind of match in that regard. So it's right around the corner, which is obviously your favorite event of the year. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is Christmas. So I want to get your thoughts not only on the new Zarya skin that we're going to be getting, but I want to get some ideas in regards to maybe some potential holiday-themed skins that we could be getting this year.
I mean, I like the skin. I think I'd be more excited about it if I was an actual Zarya player. But I'm not. So, I mean, you mentioned this in tweets and stuff like that. The hat that Zarya is wearing needs to be sold. I think it'd be stupid if they didn't do something like that. As far as other ones, let's see. I mean, Baguette as Mrs. Claus would be a good one. They need to do something with Anna, although I doubt they will because they just released one for her last year, the Snow Owl. A lot of people want Reinhardt as Santa, but we already have Torbjorn as Santa, so I don't know what they could do for Reinhardt. Because Reinhardt and Orisa are two that I think that they could really do something for, but I just don't know what. Because Orisa would make a good reindeer, but we already have Rudolph from Roadhog. So, and I will tell you this right now, Die Hard for Soldier 76 is not an option. For starters, Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
I'm not getting started with this. I've already had this discussion with all of my coworkers. If Die Hard was not a Christmas movie, more than half of the soundtrack would not be Christmas music.
If the stars of the movie are like, it's not a Christmas movie, come on. Even the people in it are like, no, it's not a Christmas movie. Die Hard is a Christmas movie as Spider-Man 2 is a Thanksgiving movie. So I'll leave that at that. Die Hard's not a Christmas movie. So we will not be getting any of that. I don't think we have any Holiday Lucio skins either. Or Christmas ones. So something from Lucio would be cool. I guess the big one that's missing to me is Mrs. Claus. So you could go with Baguette. You could go with Moira. I don't think they need to do anything with Mercy. Mercy gets enough skins in the game. If they bypass her for a little while, I'm good with that. They need a gingerbread man. I don't know. What are some ideas you've had or have you seen?
Okay, so for one, I did write down Reindeer Orisa. I mean, they have a Rudolph, but that doesn't mean that they can't necessarily do, just a traditional reindeer. So with 76, I did not go the John McClane route that Spider was recommended. I went more like ugly Christmas sweater. Because he is a dad, and that would be something that Soldier would definitely do. I've been wanted a Krampus skin for the longest time, so give that to maybe Moira would probably be the best bet. Maybe with Reaper, Reaper just feels like he has no soul or heart, so you can make him the Grinch. And then for Reinhardt, I've seen a lot of people asking, well, what can I do with Reinhardt? And well, I guess we already have like a Santa. Like they could do like something like maybe with like a lumberjack, where maybe instead of like using an axe, he has actually already chopped down a tree and he's using that for his weapon. That'd be interesting. And we just had Ash getting released not too long ago. So if they're going to do a Mrs. Claus, why not do it with Ash and then dress up Bob for Santa as well? Like they could do that as well.
Yeah. The other one that just came to mind is Sombra Elf on the Shelf. Little similar to Tracer, but you can call it something else. So, yeah, like all of this. I mean, we'll obviously find out over time. Like, who would have thought that we would have had Beach Bod, or wasn't Beach Soldier the Christmas one? Or no, that's Pool Junkrat was Christmas last year or 2 years ago. So, like, who would have guessed? Oh yeah, Pool Junkrat. Yeah, that's a holiday skin.
Yeah, in Australia.
Yeah, like we're gonna get some weird ones like that, I'm sure. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Then they'll slow leak it over before next Tuesday.
Yeah, watch. We'll
one a day.
We'll record this. We'll go on Twitter, and there's gonna be another announcement, just like there typically always is, which we'll just cover next week when we get closer to the actual event. But shifting gears, we do have a new merchandise deal that was linked between Overwatch League and Fanatics for the 2019 season and beyond. So just a little bit of background on Fanatics. This is a merchandise partner for a lot of major sports leagues out there, like the NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL. So this is a pretty massive distribution deal that's going on. So the deal with the Overwatch League for Fanatics is actually their first venture into esports. And while we don't know like any sort of financial terms of this deal, we do know that Fanatics will hold both the US and international rights for jerseys, fan gear, headwear, and other hard goods. Now, this is important to note, like, with, like, the Blizzard Gear Store, like, they're not actually able to ship, like, globally. Like, there are some markets where they're not actually able to get to. So this is definitely going to kind of, like, change accessibility and open it wider for, the international scale. But something that I'm curious about is just how this is going to like kind of tie into some other merchandisers out there, like Into the AM, who have been doing like custom jerseys, and also how it's going to affect the team profit sharing, since all of the teams kind of like share that same pool when it comes to tickets, merchandise, and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the big question here is that we need more questions answered. I mean, obviously, this is very good. Like, having a retailer like that who can sell outside the U.S. consistently and easily for everyone is massive. Now, I'm more interested to see what kind of... So, like, all right, it says in the article, Nike provides all the MLB uniforms. I think Nike also has the NFL uniforms now. It might have switched over, or it hasn't switched over yet, or something like that. But these companies own the rights to make the jerseys that the players wear, and then they have the advertisements on the logo, like the Nike swoosh or the Adidas symbol, stuff like that. Will Fnatic own the rights to kind of like official player merchandise, like what they have to wear when they walk out on to play? So every time you see them in on stage in their Overwatch League shirts or sweaters, you're going to see the Fanatics logo on it as well. So that will just be like more like that would bring Overwatch League more money, because that's more of a marketing thing at that point with Fanatics. So that will be interesting. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the other teams, because right now teams have a certain amount of stuff that they have leeway on to make their own jerseys, own shirts, stuff like that, and sell that. And we're going to hear about it rather quickly, because they said this is all going to be implemented before the start of the next season. It's just we have so many questions, and we just want to know more. So I'm sure we'll hear about it, but I'm excited because I want a more centralized location. Like buying stuff off the Overwatch League website, like the shirts and stuff is nice, and the jerseys, but they don't offer unique stuff. It's very basic. Here's a shirt. Here's a jersey shirt. Here's a jersey. Here's their hoodie. That's it.
Right.
And, if you want other stuff, you have to go to each individual team site, or you have to go to Jinx and do it and stuff like that. It would be nice to have one centralized location to have, the official merchandise and kind of unique merchandise. So I'm excited for it. I need to get me some finger bang gear. So
as long as they have custom options for the jerseys, the Roof Fanatics, I'll be happy. Because if not, then I'm just gonna take my business into the AM again to get that done.
the custom name on the back.
Yep.
I thought the Overwatch League did that.
It wasn't they didn't have it initially. We'd have to go back and check. But I would just remember Into the AMs were the first ones to kind of do that with like their own brand of Overwatch League jerseys. But moving on, let's talk a little bit about what the community is talking about. And the first one, like, I'll be honest, you guys would probably be like, what the heck are you talking about? How is this Overwatch related? And I'll get there. So, there's some pretty big talk on social media about a certain platform, Tumblr, who has decided that, you know what, guys, we're just going to ban all of this adult content on our platform. And as of December 17th, that will be through. So how is that Overwatch related? Well, I'll tell you guys. Overwatch is the biggest game on Tumblr, without question. It even is in their top 10 of every fandom. I think it was ranked sixth overall in 2018. And that community has really started to build around the base storyline, whether it was through memes, through artwork, fan fiction, which there's obviously a ton of, and things like that. And we even had some different Overwatch ships that had made the Tumblr's top 100. You got Mikanzo, everyone's favorites, Reaper 76, and of course Pharmacy has to be near the top of that as well. And it kind of circles back to a discussion we had on this podcast way back in the day, where there was a feeble attempt from Blizzard to try to remove some content from the internet that kind of fell in line with certain animations being made from in-game animations. And you obviously can't remove that stuff from the internet. It was pretty laughable, but I just thought it was funny that after all of this time, Blizzard failed in their crusade, and that it was up to a social media platform to kind of put the foot down for them. So they succeeded in one retrospect, but that just means that, that community is just going to find the resources elsewhere, whether it's on Twitter, through DeviantArt, on the R34 communities, things like that. But, it's crazy how in such a short amount of time, Overwatch just kind of, put a grip as, the top game on social media. Whether it was on Tumblr or otherwise. I just thought that was pretty unique, because normally you don't really see something that's that new kind of hold down the top rank.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. To think that Overwatch is number one, and this article points out that Fortnite, the biggest game in the world right now, hands down, was 30th. It's just the community for Overwatch is very diverse. So this is the second time we've technically talked nudity-related Overwatch topics on this.
Technically,
on this podcast.
It's third, because we also had the parody.
Buttgate. Fourth.
Oh yes, it's technically fourth. Yeah, there's that too.
We had Tracer Buttgate. We had parody. We had a lot of diva searches on Pornhub.
It actually goes further than that.
Yeah, but Diva was the top one on Pornhub, and now this, it's just it's gonna continue with the Overwatch community, and there's nothing wrong with it. Obviously Overwatch probably, from an imaging standpoint, from outside looking in at Overwatch, from an image standpoint, it's probably not ideal for them. They don't want to be oh, you're the people on Tumblr who have the bunch of, graphic, not safe for work content. That's probably not what they're aiming for, but, I think they kind of semi-embrace it. But they couldn't do anything about it. So like you said, Tumblr kind of took care of it for them. But they're going to find a new platform. It's it's one after the other, after the other, after the other. So it's an interesting story to say the least, but it's gonna go away in probably a week or two, and then people are just gonna find their new homes for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, the world is just gonna keep turning. I mean, there's no preventing that from happening. But shifting gears to the Overwatch League, we had a kind of like an oops moment in regards to a certain Overwatch League player streaming and kind of letting Washington DC's roster slip well ahead of the actual reveal. So it's important to note that prior to this, we had the vast majority of all the Overwatch League expansion franchises logos leaked. It was basically everything that was not Vancouver. Vancouver was the only one not impacted by this. And then Muma from the Houston Outlaws basically just says, "Hey, here's everyone that's on the Washington, lineup." And then sure enough, we saw them slow drip announcements. Even though we already knew who was going to be on the team, everyone that was going to be on this roster. And basically, the DC team, they revealed everything after that December 1st roster deadline where all the teams needed to have 8 players on contract. So, talking about this franchise, the Washington DC Overwatch League team will be known as the Washington Justice. Now, the first thing I want to touch up on is social media. What the heck is going on, Ed? Their Twitter handle is @WashJustice. What is that?
All right, it's another case of I wouldn't be surprised if Washington Justice was taken.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems, it's pathetic. I'm gonna tear these guys a new asshole when we start talking about their branding because it's god awful. So their media, it's Wash Justice, which just. No, that's just horrible.
It's an immediate downgrade from, I think they had DCOWL.
Yeah, that would have been 10 times better than what they actually have now. And then they're going with the American colors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, listen, that works if it's a mainly American, franchise or league. No. Half the league is not even from America.
Half their team isn't from America.
Yeah. So don't be the American team when you're not. It's not an American league. It's not like it's an NFL, MLB, NHL, which are primarily just outside of a couple teams in Canada. And we don't count them. It's Canada. If you're hey, let's go over to, South Korea and China and start flashing our American colors and our American flag and our American shield. Pretty just bad color design. The logo for the Justice, the shield, I like the shield. There's one thing. They're missing 2 stars. So if you notice with DC sports teams, they all have the 3 stars. I think except for one who doesn't have any stars. I think I think it might be the hockey team or the MLS team. So they have all that, and they all have the 3 stars across. Well, the 3 stars across have to do with George Washington. So when George Washington first, they came out with the colors, he came across with the 3 stars. And that's kind of the symbol of DC. So when they came out with this, they came out with the shield with the 1 star. Where the hell are the other 2 stars from? So I just don't get it. So that's weird. Like you said, the slow roll that they came up with the announcement of the teams. Okay, other teams, what they did was, slow roll 3, their tank line, then their support line, then their DPS line. And these guys are no, we're going to piss people off even more. And we're going to slow roll 1 person every 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm just what's the point of that? At a certain point after the second one, I'm now you're just annoying. You're just an annoying team right now.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, the team's not that good.
No.
So they get, if I could give an F minus, I would.
So, like, the overall brand, like, I thought was just okay. Like, I don't know why they don't already have Shield merchandise. Like, that would have been, like, the first thing that I would have done right off the bat. Like, but, like, an actual Shield logo, like, I'm just not a fan of it when it comes to how it looks on t-shirts or hats or anything like that. Like, it feels off to me. But, like, you know, you mentioned kind of, like, the slow drip release of the roster, which was annoying. Like, I love, like, the actual art that they did, because it was, like, kind of, like, Comic Cell-esque with the approach that they took. I thought that was awesome, so I'm sure they commissioned someone. But to kind of, like, slow drip it when we already know basically everyone on the roster was just like, why? Why would you do that?
Mm-hmm. And to point out the shield on like the for clothing and stuff like that. Honestly, when you're making up a brand logo, you want it to be unique. You want people to see it and automatically recognize it. You see an American, for lack of better terminology, an American flag shield, you are not gonna think Overwatch League. Even as an Overwatch League fan, you're gonna be like, "Oh, that's a USA shirt." Like, it's bad branding. I know you're in DC, just no times 100. So, yeah, that's my rant about them.
So let's talk about the team themselves. So who is on the Washington Justice? Well, we have a DPS line of Corey, Stratus, and Ado. For tanks, we have Janice, who initially was like the only known person on the roster. You have Sansom as the off tank. For the support line, you have Fazix, Hyanu, and Guido. So this is a mixed roster from two different areas. One, America. Two, Korea. Really not a surprise there, but what's really interesting to me is that all of the NA players on this team are from Pennsylvania. Like, what are the odds of that actually being the case on any team? Like, I just thought that was unique compared to basically everything else. But just like a few notes on the people on this lineup. Corey, when it comes to Gladiators Legion, is someone that has been wildly inconsistent in Contenders North America. When he's good, he's stellar on the hit scan roll, but when he's not, things do not look pretty. So he has very high peaks and very low lows, and that terrifies me on this DPS lineup. You also have someone like Fazix, who honestly, like, for me is, like, he hasn't necessarily been, like, a standout support player, but, like, he knows, like, his game knowledge on that role, and just kind of, like, up across the board when it comes to, like, little, like, hero intricacies, you know, little tricks that you can bring that maybe, like, bring some extra flavor to that character. Like, he knows a lot of things about really the entire, like, hero pool within Overwatch. So, for them to get Fazix is a nice thing, but, like, across the board, like, Otto, like, is probably the biggest sign-in on this team, despite coming from Shanghai. But, like, you look at, you know, they pulled Sansom and Hyanu from the Meta Gaming teams, both Athena and Bellum, and they're kind of tied to Avala, because, you know, she had coached on Meta Bellum last season. But, like, Meta Athena was a team that basically just got relegated to Open Division here not that long ago in Korea, so, like, Meta Gaming has never been, like, this standout team, which is an argument that I've already made about another, like, expansion franchise, who also pulled from this team as well. But, like, when you kind of look at this team, it's just, like, this seems like, okay, there's another team that we're going to talk about tonight that I'm going to draw a lot of comparisons to because of their sign-ins, and Washington and this other team that we'll talk about later are honestly, I would consider bottom tier. Like, nothing about this team wows me, whether it's the branding or the actual roster. I like that, you know, we at least have some NA presence, but like, there's very few standout players on this roster, and, you know, only having Otto and Janice in regard, well, they have Guido too, but, like, I don't think he's gonna be a main like a main starter on this team. So like there isn't a big Overwatch League presence, at least in regards to experience on this lineup, and that definitely worries me.
Yeah, no, this team is bad, just all around. Like, I'm not saying they can't surprise people, because they could. Like, one thing that sticks out to me is, yes, you have some North American players on this team, but I think with this squad, it actually is a downfall, because now you have to decide, when you have 5 Korean players and then 3 North American players. It's like, okay, well, what language is going to win out? Like, what language is comms going to be in? Is it going to be in English, or is it going to be in Korean? Because the Korean team players are going to communicate best in Korean, and that's probably going to be the majority of the people who are playing at the same time. Like, I mean, Janice and Sam, that, and are probably going to communicate with each other as tanks in Korean. And then you have Fazik and Hainu? Whatever.
It's like Heyanu, something like that.
Heyanu. Like, so you have your 2 support probably communicating in English or Korean. I don't know. And then it all depends on who you have on the DPS lineup. Right. I do agree Otto is probably the best player on this team, which is not saying a lot, because he's coming off a 0-40 team. So it's just, this team is they're bottom 3 for coming into this year, and I think everyone kind of knows it.
Yeah, there's another team that's kind of in the same boat. They kind of traded a star DPS player away from their team, which we'll touch up on in just a little bit, which kind of leaves them with a pretty giant hole in regards to their DPS rotation. But let's kind of like take a look back at Contenders this past week, because like something that's throwing us off is the fact that North America plays on Tuesday and Wednesday. So as we record this right now, there's Contenders North America action going on, which would be week 2, day 2. So let's look back at the first week in regards to the Wednesday matches and what went down there. So Adenor, why don't we just kind of like go through the results from week 1, day 2, wrap it up with week 2, day 1, and then I'll let everyone know what matches are actually going on tonight.
Okay, well, for week 1, day 2 last week, so while we were recording, a second win defeated Gladiators Legion 3-2 in a rather large upset, actually, if you could watch that, because Gladiator Legions is not a bad team. They still have an awesome tank line. Went down in extra games. NRG Esports defeated Skyfoxes 4-0. No real shocker there. And then XL2 Academy defeated Team Envy 3-1. And I don't think that was a huge shocker, but, could have gone either way. But, Team Envy. And then coming to this week, so last night's game, Atlanta Academy defeated Uprising Academy 4-0.
Sugar-free.
Now, so I do have one question, since I was hungover and sleeping.
Brigida.
The whole time?
Yeah, it was a lot of goats, yeah.
Yeah.
I already know what you were going to ask immediately. Like, I knew.
Yeah, I had to. So, all right, next match. First Generation defeated Mayhem No Goats Academy. Because I guess for some reason, Mayhem Academy is just saying, nope, not playing goats.
Yeah, so quick side note, guys. Some of these teams in Contenders are like, you know what, we are in the triple tank, triple support meta. Let's be the team that tries to break it, rather than actually practicing what's been the most prominent thing in the meta. They're like, yeah, we're just not going to try that. So then they don't end up practicing it, and then, their main strategy, which is anti-goats, does not work. And then they go to goats, and then that does not work, and then they just get 4-0'd.
So that's working out well for them. And then in the last game of the night, Fusion University defeated Kungarna 3-1. So what matches are tonight then, total?
Well, tonight, right now, we have Energy Esports taking on XL2 Academy. We have Gladiators Legion facing Team Envy. And then to wrap up the night, we have Second Wind looking to continue their winning streak up against the 23-man roster that is known as Sky Foxes. They do not actually have 23 people on the roster, guys. I know, but you should just... If you go on Liquipedia right now and search Sky Foxes, you might notice there's like 18 billion people listed for their staff. so
really
that's the thing. I'm not joking. Like, this is a legit thing. It's like they basically took like all of these people who were in Overwatch League that didn't do so hot, that were riding the bench, and they're like, okay, you can have a spot here. And then they just kept adding more and more people on the staff, and it just kind of just blew up for whatever reason. I don't know why that was the case.
Yeah,
it's
like
silly.
They have 2 strictly DPS positional coaches. They have a tank coach. They have a support coach. Like they're getting to the point where they probably are going to have like a coach for each character in game.
Mm-hmm.
So, just if you're ever looking, if you ever really want to be a, Bastion only assistant coach, Sky Foxes is for you.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it's very peculiar why they have so many people. And just a note, like, they got 4-0'd in their first game. Chances are they're probably going to get 4-0'd again. So they need all of the help that they can get right now, and we'll just kind of see whether or not all of this coaching staff is really going to be any benefit for the team. But, we have to talk about a certain thing that really caused an uproar within the community. And it comes as no surprise that it was from the LA Gladiators. They're kind of used to, like, bamboozling everyone. And this one kind of, like, took the cake. So basically what ends up happening, and I'm sure everyone knows this by now, the LA Gladiators kind of, like, teased that Big Goose and Chaz were leaving the team. And the community was like, what the hell is going on? What are you guys thinking? They were grabbing their pitchforks, ready to burn down and shoulder bump D-Pay. And basically, like, competitive Overwatch Reddit blew up. All the Discords were just as confused as all of us, and then 30 minutes passed by. And then Gladiators tweet out that their Finnish support duo is now a trio because the Gladiators have picked up Reba from Team Giganti, which is also where, the original Gladiator support duo came from. Now, it's important to note, like, Giganti has been one of the EU powerhouse teams. This is a team that finished second in Contenders Europe Season 1. They were, like, 3rd or 4th last season in Europe. And Reba is a flex support who is primarily known for his mechanical skill on Zenyatta into Ana, but he does flex to Moira, which has been something that the Gladiators have struggled a little bit with on their support line. And Reba, as a player, his Moira is really his bread and butter. We've seen him duo quite a bit with the Fran on stream. And, every time, like, I look at the EU ladder, like, Reba is always, like, at the very top or top 3. So, I have to say, like, the only thing that I didn't like about this, and, this kind of, like, circles back to, PR when it comes to the Overwatch League, and just esports in general, because there have been a ton of different issues with it. My biggest gripe is the fact that they did this, and it kind of, like, took away all of the attention from the actual player and put it on the organization themselves and their PR. Like, no one is talking about the actual sign, and everyone's talking about how the Gladiators kind of, like, jebaited everyone. And it kind of just makes Reba, who, was really the important part of this announcement, kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, it basically put all the attention on the trolling people. Like, and it's like, no, Ripa's actually kind of a big deal to sign. Like, because especially for the Gladiators, who probably had the most high profile, get rid of. Yeah. In Senior Fissure. And, the more positive players that they signed, the better. But it took away from all that. I fell for it as well as everyone else in the community who fell for it. And I think it kind of turned from, this is this is a great troll to, now that people think about it, you're like, it's just actually more annoying than anything. Like, I get why they did it, funny and everyone had laughs and good times, but it was just awkward. And Rippa being signed to the team is an afterthought, basically, is what it kind of comes down to. So, could have been handled a little bit better, but, they got us all, so I guess they got that on us.
What I will say is, regardless of how this went down, in regards to actual off-season sign-ins, regardless of where Fisher ended up, I think the Gladiators had one of the best off-seasons in regards to kind of like building around some of the weak spots on their lineup. Not to say Fisher was a weak spot, because he was not by any means from an actual player perspective on the field. But, they had some absolutely massive sign-ins, and they're I'm trying to think like where would classify them right now. See, we haven't done any like preseason rankings, but I'm confident to say that the Gladiators have a very good shot at being a top 3 team in season 2.
Oh yeah, like they are going to be, so obviously until we have a Chicago team, like I have to kind of pick my favorite teams, and it's the Fingerbangs and the Gladiators. That's a weird. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of weird pairings when, one of your favorite teams is Fingerbangs. But it's just, they're a good team. They're one of those teams where like they signed Decay, who was massive signing for them. But I wanted to touch on this a little bit when we talked about the rosters, but like we talk about all these big name DPS signings, and right now DPS doesn't mean shit. Like it really doesn't. Like be a good Widowmaker all you want. I don't care. You're useless.
Yeah, if you don't play Zarya or Brigitte, you need to leave.
Yeah, like hey, they have the best DPS duo in the league. Well, good, because that means literally nothing to us. Are they the best Zarya in the league? Because then that's awesome. Are they the best Baguette or Moira in the league? Okay, then I'll take them. So like that's kind of what it's come down to, is like you have all these great DPS players, and everyone wants to talk about them because they're the flashy ones. They're the ones that make all the plays, but when in reality it doesn't matter. So concentrate on support. This could be huge for them, because what is one of the main components of GOATs? Moira.
Well,
so
depends on the variation they're going for, but yeah, she is part of it.
First off, anyone who says it's GOATs when they take out a tank and bring in like a Moira, not a Moira, like a Mei, it's not GOATs anymore. It's a 3 support line. It's not GOATs. You can't take a tank out and replace it with a DPS character and still call it GOATs.
Well, hold on. Well, first of all, it's Snoats, for one.
Okay, first off,
and
no.
two, there have been instances in the past where Mei kind of has been the person that would sub in for a flex or off tank.
Don't make excuses for them.
Moving on, though, we gotta talk about Boston, and this will not be the first time we touch up on Boston tonight, because they also kind of shipped one of their players out to another team. But they've made a couple of interesting sign-ins, both at the Contenders level as well as the Overwatch League level. So talking about Contenders North America, we have Uprising Academy, or ex-Toronto Esports, whatever you want to call them. They have added some extra firepower to the roster by signing former Brazil Gaming House, which is now known as Base Tryhards, DPS player, or Brigitte main, in this case, Klaus. Because, we gotta circle back to the GOATS conversation. So the move makes Klaus the first South American player to compete in Contenders North America, and it's also the first signing of a South American player on an Academy team. So this is a DPS player who plays Tracer, Genji, Pharah, or more current, Brigitte. He had played on Karma and Isurus Gaming before eventually joining Brazil Gaming House this season in Contender South America, which just meant that he wasn't on the championship team when Brazil Gaming House is basically run-shotting through that entire region. because, they are back-to-back contender South America champions. They're also undefeated in this season. They haven't dropped a single map. But Klaus is playing right now from South America. So, he's dealing with pains that, basically go upwards of, 250 MS. And he, at least in Week 1, had some pretty standout moments. In Week 2, in Uprising Academy's game, he got focused a lot early. So we started to see more teams kind of focusing down the Brigida in the triple tank, triple support. But the Uprising didn't stop there, however, as earlier today it was announced that Boston Uprising signed a Brazilian player, Alamau. Now, Alamau is the first player from that Contenders region to join the Overwatch League, and he too comes from this same team, Brazil Gaming House, based tryhards, and that's the first Brazil representation in the Overwatch League, outside of Hydration, but technically he was on, the United States team, so you can't really count him in the same boat. But he was a support player on Brazil's World Cup team. He is a main support, known for his Lucio and Mercy play. And, both of them are going to be with the Uprising organization. Now, what does this mean for South America? Well, South America is one of these regions who are still kind of in their infancy. The pay in Contender South America is absolute shit. There's no other way to describe it. For a win in South America, they get less money than a loss for these North American teams get. It's very skewed. But South America has a lot of talent that is untapped, and they don't really have, the same LAN type of environment compared to, NA, EU, Korea. And, there's a lot of comparisons between both South America and Australia, so I'm happy to see some South American representation starting to trickle to the higher end of play. But at the end of the day, and I know you're probably going to mention this too, it's with Boston, and that worries me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's... Boston is oh my god, as much as I want it, they're the new dumpster fuel. We'll talk about it. I'm just going to mention it. They got rid of their best player, hands down their best player. And it almost kind of seems like they're playing cheapest man up to bat. Who can we get that isn't going to cost us anything? And, it worked out well for them in Season 1 because, if you remember back at the beginning of Season 1, they basically signed a bunch of no-names that people really hadn't heard of. And everyone expected Boston Uprising to be bottom-of-the-barrel team. Nobody knew what was going on. And, they're kind of doing the same thing instead of actually having to pay people. They're probably making massive amounts of money on this. You see this with pro sports teams from time to time, where the owner is more concerned about, the bottom line dollar than putting out a winning team, because no matter what team you bring out, you're going to make money. A good example is, honestly, the Cleveland Browns. They haven't put a good team out there in 15, 16 years. But but they're still making massive money, and it's, they're trying. They're just they suck at it, and they're not putting the effort in. The old Arizona Cardinals used to be the same way, and it's just, you have to think that the ownership for Boston Uprising is just more concerned from the business aspect than the game aspect. Because right now, honestly, the only difference between winning and losing is not that much. So what was it? The winners got 500,000 this year, or was it $1 million?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
I think they got $1 million, but then 500,000 of that went to the players. So the teams got 500,000, like the owners did. So 500,000, honestly, is like 2 to 3 really good players. Well, how about this? I don't sign those 2 to 3 really good players. I save $500,000 and still make as much as everyone else in the league. Now, this may not be the case once they move to their own cities, because then they have to rely on attendance of people coming to the game. And that's where they could get into some issues. But right now, there's no downfall for somebody to be a cheapskate in Overwatch League. Mm-hmm. So it's sad, but it's true. Good on Striker getting the hell out of there. I think one thing I think I saw tweeted out today, some Uprising Academy or Boston Uprising, is they're the only team to have signed somebody from every continent that has people living on it. So basically every continent except Antarctica. Right. Because they were the only ones who have signed people from South America. So, they got that going for them. But the thing is they could probably pay them less than everyone else. Now, when we talk about Klaus getting signed, I could see Klaus getting signed to a 2-way contract. And him being part of the main team, and then him moving up, honestly, with Alamo. Because I think Alamo coming up here with Klaus, like those two together, they're going to be more comfortable. They can live together. They can, train together. Like you have a familiar face. You're not just moving here from South America by yourself, knowing no one. Moving them up here together is probably the smart thing to do. So hopefully Klaus comes out as a 2-way player, or maybe they just sign him outright to the team once they see his baguette play. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I'm not Boston right now. I will say this: Boston Uprising right now are the worst team in the Overwatch League.
You can definitely make an argument for that, and we got to talk about another move out of Boston. Now, in my show notes, I wrote this as Striker flees Boston and signs with Shock. That was the best way to put it, because we've heard about all of these internal issues with Boston. How there was like a divide with their Korean players and then the rest of their roster. And, that is part of the reason why I am a bit concerned about the South American players that are going to be competed with Boston's organization. Well, the Shock, with this move, basically have their 12th player. They got Striker, they have another DPS. There was, a transfer agreement between the Shock and Boston Uprising. And, for Striker, this is a pretty big move, because going to the Shock, he also has some familiar faces, because, they got Krusty from Boston, who is the Shock's head coach. They also have Peak, who also worked with Boston. And, I know, the community reaction, at least to some extent, has been well, why does the Shock need another DPS player? They have 5 on the roster with this move. They're going the Boston support route from Season 1. And, this kind of circles back to the whole GOATS meta, where you don't really need DPS, but that's besides the point. But all I'm going to say is, if the plan is to run Striker and Architect, that is definitely going to be a top-tier DPS duo in the Overwatch League for Season 2. But on the other end, it's kind of like a case of, New York. How do you fit all these DPS players in some sort of stable rotation? What does it mean for someone like Sinatra, who really only pops off on Tracer? He's played a little Zarya, but even to that degree, he hasn't been a standout. And then you also have to think, does this move actually confirm, the issues that Boston were rumored to be having in Season 1 with their Korean players?
Yeah, I think this really actually the issues Boston was having with the Korean players. But Boston itself is just a shit show of an organization. So besides that, let's get back to the Striker being the new hotness in San Francisco. Like you said, what does this mean for Architect? Architect he is the star DPS player on that team in my mind. Striker comes in as arguably a equal, if not better, Tracer than Sinatra. Take or leave, however it is, equal or better. The thing is Striker actually has a hero pool.
Right.
Sinatra does not. Sinatra is a 1.5 trick pony. Sinatra will not be playing DPS anymore, but he will be playing Zarya for them for GOATs, which I think is nice for them because then they can have Architect on Baguette or do some weird combo. But I think they're kind of realizing that, their mistake of giving Sinatra all that money just from the flashiness of the Overwatch World Cup. They're not obviously going to get rid of him, but he probably signed a 2-year contract. So after this year, I could see him not being back unless he really proves he can handle other characters. If one thing was proven towards the end of season 1 is that having a hero pool is mandatory. And if you do not have a hero pool like Sinatra does not have, it's not going to work. That's why I fear for people like him. Sebeobi is another one that I kind of fear because, yes, he can play other characters outside of Tracer, but he doesn't play it on an Overwatch League level, I think. So like the 1 tricks or 1.5 tricks are going to go away. And I think Shock kind of saw that coming and realized that Sinatra is probably not, the face of their franchise. And for him to take his, $150,000 and get out the door next year. But he is useful right now with Zarya play for GOATs. So this, I think, was a great move by Shock. I don't know if it was a trade or if Uprising just basically were like, yeah, we're just not going to sign Striker. You can go ahead and sign him. I feel there was a trade. It's just not being said because they aren't forced to tell us if it's a trade or not. Mm-hmm. But it could have been something along the lines of, just straight up money trade. Like Shock could have just given them money, and which, would not surprise me, which you see from time to time with a lot of sports organizations, would not surprise me to kind of go back to my point of Boston Uprising being cheap bastards. Like they're going to just trade away a player and be like, okay, we'll just take money back. We'll just make more profit off of it. So good for Striker getting the hell out. I'm excited about the Shock this year. I think they could do some damage, especially because we still have time. If GOATs isn't a thing for when season 2 starts, the Shock are in pretty darn good shape.
Yeah, it's Shock are peculiar to me because like a lot of us felt really confident that once some of the key players that they had built a team around became 18, that they were going to have a drastic shift in regards to their play style, just how well they're doing, and we didn't really get to see that. So this is a team that has a very they have a lot of potential. We just haven't seen it come to fruition as of yet. So the ceiling for this team is pretty high. It's just a matter of whether or not they can actually reach that point. So that's really going to be something to keep an eye on going into season 2. But moving on.
I forgot they actually they picked up Rascal too.
Mm-hmm. They called him up from Energy.
Jesus.
They have 5 DPS. So another signing that happened, this one out of the Dallas Fuel camp, is something that you and I are probably going to disagree on, just based off of recent happenings. Potentially. I don't know where you sit. We haven't actually talked about this signing in particular, but the Dallas Fuel went out and they signed Flex DPS player ZachaREEE. Now, this is pretty much like the final signing of the offseason for Dallas Fuel, and ZachaREEE is coming off of his Overwatch World Cup for Team USA. We talked about that at great detail. USA obviously disappointed this year. They didn't even get out of the quarterfinals, and I can't blame South Korea. But ZachaREEE was part of that Fusion University championship roster in Contenders North America for both Season 1 and Season 2. Now, his hero pool consists of Tracer, Genji, Sombra, Widowmaker, and we can't forget Brigitte, because he's doing that a lot on ladder. So I want to get your gut reaction here, Ednar, because I've heard a lot of naysayers in the community about this particular sign-in just being a big WTF, Dallas. What are you guys doing? What are your thoughts on ZachaREEE?
Okay, so my first initial thoughts on ZachaREEE. I love ZachaREEE. And I think ZachaREEE has a chance to be a real star in this league. I don't think he could have gone to a worse team. Main reason being is, okay, so you have Tracer. Well, they already have a Tracer. He could play Sombra and he could play Widowmaker. It all depends on what Taimu is doing. Like, is Taimu going to be Taimu of old, or is Taimu going to be the new Seagull? Like, ride the pine, come on, have some bright spots. Ride the pine, come on, have some bright spots. He could pop off on a Genji, because I know he was really Genji. Like you had mentioned on Overwatch League Network, he was a very good Genji. And then they got, a Genji god on Fusion University, and who are you? Like, and you're like, okay, well, we don't need you on Genji. We need you on, more of a hit scan. So he went over there, and he was one of the best in contenders doing that. Like, I don't know, like, how they plan on using him. And that's the thing that worries me the most.
Okay.
If Genji is a thing, I think he's going to be amazing. But with GOATs, Genji is not a thing. He's just not. He's a good Tracer, but so's Effect. Like, are you going to take Effect off of Tracer? Sombra would be good if they decide on anti-GOATs. That's fine. It's just, there are other teams that probably could have used ZachaREEE's abilities more than the Dallas Fuel. Now, he does have the connection with Arrow. Arrow coached him up in Fusions University. Probably wants to bring in his own guys. Something like this can spell the end for people like Taimu, AKM, people like that. And not like they're going to get rid of them, but, your DPS duo is, if I had to pick right now, your DPS is ZachaREEE and Effect. And I don't think it's close. I think it has to be those two. Now, if you're running GOATs, yes, ZachaREEE will probably be on the baguette. And Effect, I think you'd probably maybe want on Zarya, because I don't know if they have a true Zarya on that team. Because you have, OGE and RCK being your main tanks. I don't know if Mickey really plays Zarya at all. I don't ever remember him playing Zarya. But, I think ZachaREEE is probably one of the top three signings in this year. We knew he was going to be brought into the Overwatch League. It's just a matter of when and for what team. And Dallas Fuel makes sense from the connection, but I think another team could have done better. I think the Valiant should have gone out and signed him. He would have been a great addition to the Valiant. Like, you lose soon, and you replace him with ZachaREEE. In my mind, it's a slight downgrade, but not much of a downgrade. So Valiant should have pushed harder to get him, but yeah, I think it's great signing. I don't know if it's a great fit.
Yeah, for me, this is definitely one of the bigger signings out of Contenders North America. Like, my biggest gripe has nothing to do with the sign-in. Like, I was actually okay with it, and a lot of that just comes down to, like, a lot of misinformation that's being spread amongst the competitive Overwatch community. Because when it comes to someone like ZachaREEE, or, anyone that's just come in out of the World Cup, that is the last thing that people remember, right? So when it comes to thinking about ZachaREEE, people are just looking back at the World Cup and how Team USA, just dropped the ball and just underperformed compared to all of our expectations, and they're just looking at that. A lot of people aren't going to know that, he was a Genji one-trick before entering Contenders. A lot of people don't know that Who Are You basically had that spot locked down, which forced ZachaREEE to, flex to a hit scan role on that team. So, like, the assumption coming in with ZachaREEE is that, he underperformed on LAN most recently, and he only plays hit scan on a roster that everyone already sees has a lot of hit scan, when that's not actually the case. No. So, like, the other thing that I hear when it comes to the Genji argument is why would you go out and sign a player that hasn't picked up Genji in roughly a year in the competitive Overwatch scene to play the projectile on the team? Why not just go out and, like, try to get Shadowburn? Well, Shadowburn already went to, Paris Eternal. And to that argument, I have a very distinct counterpoint to this. There are teams, there's one team in particular that we are going to talk about later on tonight in our main discussion that signed not one, but two different players for their roster that haven't even played competitive Overwatch at all since 2017. And yet nobody is talking about that. Everyone is just talking about how ZachaREEE is a hit scan player, when in actuality he flexes between projectile and hit scan, and not focusing on bigger pictures. So there's a lot of arguments that are being based on misinformation, and it's really, like, I'm not gonna say it's tilting me, but I just wish that the community was a bit more in the know when it comes to the player backgrounds, because there's a lot of assumptions being made when nobody knows what the plan is for the Deadless Fuel. So for a lot of people, this is kind of a weird sign-in, but I would imagine, if we see Sombra, Doomfist, if we see Genji, that ZachaREEE is going to be seeing a lot of play, and, if it is still going to be a Brigitte meta, there's a chance that Mickey might not even be playing. Like, they could put ZachaREEE on that role as well, or just substituting between, him and Mickey on Brigitte. So this is just going to be one of those moments where I feel like the community as a whole just needs to take a deep breath. This isn't like the end of the world. We saw, like, the quick turnaround that Arrow had with Dallas Fuel in Stage 4, to the point where Dallas actually, made a run in the stage playoffs, which no one expected at any given point in the season after all of the issues that they had. So have a little faith in your team. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, no, it's one. The hotness for the World Cup brings out the best and worst in people. Like, people really wanted to come down on ZachaREEE because of the way he played in the World Cup. Well, you know what? That goes both ways. Who were the two hotnesses last year in the World Cup? Flower, who got benched in Contenders. Let's just point that out.
Because, when you compare him to the other DPS on XL2 Academy,
Exactly.
He got outperformed every single week, and he wasn't even, like, a standout performer at all.
Yeah, like, Flower was like a god coming into Contenders in Overwatch League. Like, he was considered the throw all your money, start a team around this guy. And in Contenders, he wasn't even the best DPS player on his team. Okay, let's look at the other, like, hype hero, Jake. Jake for the Outlaws. Okay, people like Jake. Jake's okay. Jake is not that good. Like, he's good, but Jake is not that good. Like, he just really isn't. And it showed last year. He was a definite weak link for the Houston Outlaws. So it's like, don't judge people from the World Cup. The World Cup is the worst place to judge people. So, like, don't read into ZachaREEE. ZachaREEE is good. He's really good. So, don't judge a book by its cover, even though his name might be Delete Brig and he has to play Brig. So that's my PSA for ZachaREEE.
Yeah. So again, guys, there's a lot of overreaction. So let's wait to see what the plan is for him as a player. But with that being said, earlier this evening, really just like an hour before we hit the live button on Twitch, we had Watchpoint, and they did their season preview. And thank you, Bob. Yes, I completely am oblivious to that. So during this, we had some announcements that were made, which included some changes to the schedule, which are confirmed, as well as the opening week schedule. So to start things off, we do know, confirmed, that the games are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this year. So on Thursday and Friday, and these times are all Pacific time, we have games starting at 4 p.m., 5:30 p.m., 7 p.m., and 8:30 p.m., with Saturday and Sunday games happening a little bit earlier. So they'll start at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 1:30 p.m., 3 p.m., and 4:30 p.m. So shifting to Thursday through Sunday, we have, a little bit earlier starts during the weekend. So, it's like we actually have some pretty good times for global reach here. So there's not going to be as many like EU, viewers and fans that are kind of like getting the shaft. So we got more of a global reach, which is a bit more welcoming, basically kind of like across the board. And I know a lot of people are going to be happy about that because there was a lot of complaints in regards to how the schedule was set up for Season 1, and they'll be able to, hit more key markets with this shift.
Oh, sorry. I was just
you were just waiting. Yeah.
I was just reading the schedule.
Oh.
These day 3 and 4 schedules are brutal, but no. I like how they changed the times with the schedules. They needed to do something, obviously, with adding 8 new teams. The 4 games per day, obviously, more than what we're used to. So, like, someone like me, I'm not going to be able to catch the last game of every day.
Mm-hmm.
But they do a good job, it seems, of having, like, if you look at the actual matches that are like the last games, it's of teams that are East Coast, mainly like in China, South Korea,
right?
European games. So they do a good game of that. Like, first week, last game, 2 Chinese teams. Next week, Chinese versus South Korea team. Week after that, another Chinese team. Week after that, another Korean team is in the final match. So that's awesome how they did. They did mention something about road.
They did. So basically,
I'm very intrigued by this.
So basically, when I put up this slide, it just said road games. It was like in all caps, and everyone is just like, "What?
Huh?
What is this?" And we do not know any details. Now, if we circle back, this is something that we've talked about in the past when they first started talking about traveling with the Overwatch League. And something that you and I both felt was that there'd be a chance that, like, maybe they go like the host city route, where 1 week, or like for the playoffs, like stage playoffs, they go to a market outside of Los Angeles, and that kind of serves as the Overwatch League hub for that weekend. Now, we don't know if this is going to be like road games are going to be like every week. We don't know if it's going to be like once a stage type thing, if they're gonna only do it once a half, things like that. But, like, if I was to put money on it, I would assume that if, I'm trying to think what would be the best way to do it. So, maybe say, like, the first stage, you have the stage playoffs in LA. The second stage, you have him on the East Coast in, like, New York. Maybe in stage 3, they have it in the Midwest. And then stage 4, they have it, maybe it like international, and then maybe the finals they do in like Korea. They could kind of like branch it out in different areas so they have that global reach. But like I don't think it's going to be a case of every other week they're going to be on the road, because that would be I think that would be too much to expect. This is a way for them to kind of test the market for when they expand to doing more worldwide coverage on the road in Season 3.
Now, I think they could do something along the lines of, all right, first off, when you say they could do something in the Midwest, we all know the Overwatch League hates the Midwest. Because we do not have a Chicago team.
Because the closest thing's Toronto. Jeez.
Yeah, and I'm not cheering for Canada, eh? So, when I first heard road games, I thought about doing just single matches, because a lot of teams are only going to be playing 1 match a week.
Okay.
So my thought was, like, once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, or something of that nature, you do these big matches. So 1 week, you do Houston versus Dallas,
so
somewhere in Texas.
So rival games, essentially.
Rival games.
Okay.
You do Houston versus Dallas. You do Vancouver versus Toronto, because Canada. They can play it in Quebec for all I care. you do Boston, New York, you do, Korean teams, you do one in Korea, and then you do one in China for the Chinese teams, something like that, where like you do big rivalry games in a neutral location. Like, I mean, obviously it's not going to happen, but Dallas versus Houston and Jerry Dome. I mean, Jerry Dome will not happen for a non, season playoff, but something of that nature. We could even do something in Vegas. Like, we don't have a Vegas team, but like a Vegas showcase match. Stuff like that is something they could do, where you're not sending every team to a location. You're sending 2 teams to one location for a special match at a special location when they both have to only play once that week. That way travel's not an issue, stuff like that. And you can really build up. Especially, like, obviously the Dallas Houston one would be a huge one, because that's a big rivalry between the two of them. Right. So they could do something like that. That's what I got from road games. But if it's like road game, Florida Mayhem versus Hanzu sorry, Mayhem versus the Finger Babes in Miami, it's like, okay, no one really cares. Like, it's not like Miami fans or Mayhem fans are going to care, but no other fans are going to care because there's no rivalry there. So it'll be interesting to see what the details are when it comes out. So I'm excited for that.
So I need a comment on something that did happen on Watchpoint today that absolutely infuriates me. So when they were going over the rosters, they had a slide for like all the rosters, and they kind of posted like who stayed on the team, who left the team, what the new, like where they landed, who they signed, from what team they came from, and there was so much misinformation on those slides that that was one of the reasons why I turned it off, because I saw like how many players they had coming from the wrong team. And it tilts me to no end that they couldn't get that right when all of these people are tuning in. So there's even going to be even more misinformation out there. So guys, I guess everyone is just coming from Element Mystic that got signed by the offseason from Contenders Recap. That's not actually the case. Don't look for that in regards to proper information on prior teams, because you're not going to get it there. Now, on the other hand, we did get the Week 1 schedule, which we're going to talk about. So we'll break it down day by day, and then we'll I don't want to like go through every single match in regards to our thoughts, but like maybe like we'll kind of like alternate days and say like what the marquee match for us is going to be. So
I do want to say one thing.
Okay.
I don't know if you caught this, but the Watchpoint did spoil a signing.
Yes, for Dynasty.
For Dynasty, they spoiled.
I have that in my notes.
Fitz. Yeah, they spoiled Fitz signing, and then like they didn't even, when they announced that they showed the team, they didn't. They're like the new additions, and you heard a pause, and then they didn't say his name even though it was listed, and then it's like, oh, by the way, Soul Dynasty sent out a tweet, cat's out of the bag, we signed Fitz.
Right.
Thanks, Overwatch League. Great job.
So I'll just talk about Fitz really quick here. So Soul Dynasty added him to the roster. This was unannounced outside of Watchpoint until Dynasty tweeted about it after the fact. This is a flex DPS player coming out of Open Division Korea. He played for, I think it was Going Water S. In that case, he also played for the GC Busan sister team, which is GC Busan Lucia. And, I honestly don't know too much about him, but, like, we have seen some other teams. Some of the original 12 teams. Well, it's because it's Open Division.
I'm still surprised.
It's not like there's a lot of promotion in the Tier 3 scene, Edinar. It's the same case with Krillin. This is another sign-in. This was with London Spitfire, who signed someone straight out of Open Division, and no one knows anything about the kid, So there is that. So circling back, as you try to sidetrack me, let's talk about the Week 1 Season 2 schedule. So opening day, opening match, we have a Grand Finals rematch between the Philadelphia Fusion and the London Spitfire. This is very traditional for leagues. You got the prior, finals, grand championships, however you want to label it. So that's awesome to see. We even saw like a slight color variation tweak that they did for Philadelphia Fusion, where they're primarily black and then orange, not necessarily the other way around. We also have Boston Uprising going up against the New York Excelsior. Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Seoul Dynasty. And to cap off opening night, you have the Hangzhou Spark going up, or Hangzhou Fingerbane, my bad.
Come on.
You were going to correct me, I know you. Versus the Shanghai Dragons. So the battle for the first Chinese Overwatch League win will be between the Fingerbanes and the Dragons. Adonar, we got 4 very high caliber matches to start off Season 2. Which one are you looking forward to the most?
Okay, high caliber maybe stretching. Like 4 high caliber. Because you have the Boston Uprising, the worst team in the league, facing off against the New York Excelsior, arguably the best team. That's not, no. Okay, so that's the Fusion Spitfire match, whatever. I don't care. I care about the other 2 matches. I care about the Gladiators versus Seoul Dynasty, and mainly because the Shade game is awesome. So I don't know if you caught this, but the Gladiators tweeted at Seoul, saying, "We don't want anything back." That is Shade. Like, if you could see Shade attack, that's what the Gladiators did, and that's going to be a good game. Like, I love what the 2 teams who did the best in improve, I think, was Seoul and the Gladiators. So you have the new and improved teams going at each other. I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be fun. This is the game I'm most excited to see. The Fingerbangs versus Shanghai. Like, the Fingerbangs are my team for Season 2. It's going to be the first Chinese team to win. I think that's the storyline they're really going to push, which is pathetic, but it's what they're really going to push. Now, it's not the same Shanghai Dragons that we all saw. So it's going to be a brand new Shanghai team and a Fingerbang team that is probably not as good as the new Vancouver, but close. They're definitely the second best expansion team to be announced this offseason. So it's going to be a close matchup between these 2. Like, out of all the matches, I think this might be the closest of all 4 of them. And I have to work at 5:30 the next morning. Mm-hmm. So it's one of the matches I don't know if I'm going to watch or if I'm just going to be super tired for work. But it's the one I'm most excited for. Like, these 2, this 3 hours is going to be amazing. So I don't know. What do you think of day 1?
There's so many storylines. For one, like, I want to see if the Uprising Contenders DPS duo of Blase and Color Hex can even compete with New York Excelsior at that level. That's going to be a big question mark, and that's one of the reasons why Boston trading away Striker is going to be a big storyline, because they don't really have a DPS core outside of Contenders level DPS, so that's going to be a key thing. But for me, like, as the soulmate, Gladiators Dynasty is going to be my must-watch, the one I'm most invested in, because I want to see whether or not Dynasty can match the aggression that Fisher is going to bring, because that has not been Dynasty's forte when it comes to their gameplay style. They're more of a reactive, defense-type team, kind of like what London was doing in Season 1. They didn't have the same success as the Spitfire, so that's definitely going to be the marquee one for me. And Spark Dragons, or Fingerbane versus Dragons, is going to be a pretty good one too. Like, I feel like basically what you have is you have the team that is the new hotness, that has basically taken the entire fan base basically out from underneath the Shanghai Dragons.
Yes.
So that's going to be curious. Like, I want to see when they're tracking all of the donations on Twitch, where the Spark are going to be in correlation to the Dragons. Like, I don't know where it's gonna land, because, like, you're still gonna have
What did you
people...
just call them?
Well, we're not gonna call that every single time, because you're just going.
You
gonna
told
tilt.
me I had.
You had to.
Dang it.
So, like, I feel like the Dragons are still going to have this huge following until they get that first win. I want to see how big of a drop there's going to be after that first win actually happens. So that I'm curious to see that. So moving on to day 2, we have the Toronto Defiant going up against the Houston Outlaws, Atlanta Reign versus Florida Mayhem, Dallas Fuel versus San Francisco Shock, and then the Guangzhou Charge going up against the Chengdu Hunters. For me, this is kind of a weird one. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm invested so much in these particular expansion teams. So the Fuel Shock match for me is definitely going to be the big match on day 2, because you have both of these teams who on paper kind of stockpile DPS. You have teams that have some pretty high ceilings that haven't quite reached their potential. So starting off with a win here is absolutely crucial for both of these teams, and I feel like this is gonna kind of like set the pace for both of these teams. Like, if the Shock come out, have a good performance, they can just use that momentum to carry on throughout stage 1. And if you're Dallas, like, this is gonna answer some of the unknown questions that a lot of their fan base and the overall competitive Overwatch community have about them, because of going back to ZachaREEE. Like, a lot of people don't know what to expect from ZachaREEE, what role he's going to fit, and this is going to be the prime example of seeing what Arrow's big brain plan is going to be. And you can't you also can't downplay Jane as well on that coaching staff.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. I think is going to be the Atlanta versus Florida game. Just because you have Atlanta, you have a team that some people they're a mysterious team. Outside of Defran. They're a mysterious team that people kind of want to know about. And the Mayhem are, outside of Shanghai, are the team that went the biggest facelift of any team that came in. So you kind of want to see what the Mayhem did, like, as a new team, and how they play. Because, bringing back 3 people from the craptacular team they had last year, is going to be interesting. So those 2 matches, I am not invested in the Charge or the Hunters match, mainly because neither one of those rosters I think are any good.
Okay.
None of their rosters impressed me, or had me excited to see them. So to see them play each other, especially on the late game for me, starting at 10:30 at night, that's not something I want to stay up for. So yeah, that's probably the one I'm least interested in.
All right, well, moving on to day number 3, and thank you again, Bob, for sending these through DMs on Discord so we can talk about them this week rather than holding off. So to kick things off, we have the Paris Eternal, and I'm going to be looking down a lot because it's on my phone, guys. I apologize in advance for our Twitch viewers. We have the Paris Eternal going up against the London Spitfire. We have New York Excelsior taking on Washington Justice. The Hangzhou Spark going up against the LA Valiant. And then to cap off day 3, we have the Shanghai Dragons going up against the Vancouver Titans. All right, Ed, let's start with you. What is the marquee match for day number 3?
I'm going Finger Bangs versus Valiant. Because I think that's going to be the closest match of the day. With Paris and Spitfire, Spitfire is going to probably 4-0 them. With Excelsior versus Wash Justice, they'll probably 4-0 them. And then Vancouver versus Shanghai is very interesting to me, just because it will be the first time we see Runaways playing in the Overwatch League. But the thing is I still think they're a much better team than Shanghai, so they're probably going to just destroy Shanghai. Maybe not 4-0, but 3-1. So if I'm looking at it from a purely competitive standpoint, I think Hanzo and the Valiant are the 2 teams out will have the closest matchup. But seeing Vancouver and seeing if they're cracked up to be in the Overwatch League is going to be interesting. So I already know your answer.
Oh, do you? Do you know my answer?
I think we all know your answer.
Yes, it's 100% Shanghai versus Vancouver. And, obviously, Runaway being in the Overwatch League is a huge deal for me. because I followed them throughout all of Contenders Korea. Well, even before that with Apex, which I'll go into more in a bit when we talk about their brand reveal. But for me, like, it's a combination of Runaway being in the Overwatch League, and then going up against some Shanghai Dragons components from some of these other Korean powerhouse teams, like Kontu Panthera, like Element Mystic. So there's a lot of Korean talent that's going to be in this series that are well aware of what the other team has done in the past. And I feel like that is going to help elevate the overall game between these two teams. So that's definitely something that we're going to have to watch with Vancouver, is a lot of these teams in the Overwatch League that kind of like built around certain core rosters out of Korea, they've played before. So they have a lot of tape on some of these teams already, which is going to be pretty interesting to see like how that kind of plays a factor going into Season 2. Now, they might not have always had the best results against some of those teams, but at least they're familiar with those teams. So that's definitely unique, because in Season 1, we really didn't have that. So,
No.
So we'll see how that comes into play. But to wrap up the week on day 4, we start off with Houston Outlaws going up against Boston Uprising, or in the case of the two teams that had their contenders teams basically implode. We have Philadelphia Fusion going up against the Atlanta Reign, the LA Gladiators taking on the San Francisco Shock, and then the Seoul Dynasty facing the Dallas Fuel. So this is an interesting one. I'm going to go with Philadelphia versus Atlanta in this case, because
Really?
Philadelphia, this is a team that kind of had their nose to the grindstone in Season 1. That surprised a lot of people, that Frankenstein type roster. And there's a lot of question marks around Atlanta, around Defran, around Inlayer, and how they're going to do. So if I'm talking about like a DPS versus DPS route here, I'm most invested in that one. But I would say the last 3 matches all have something that I'm going to be invested in overall. But I want to see how Defran is going to do against a more complete team, which I definitely feel that Philadelphia Fusion are.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's going to be Gladiators for a Shock. Just because these are the two teams that if you're like, hey, I really want to watch a match where we don't have goats, this is the team that these are the teams that you like. Both of them have those 4 DPS players that you just want to unleash and not play goats. It could be an old classic game, like one of those. It could be dive versus dive. It could be anything like that. So they're also probably the 2 closest matched up teams. Maybe Seoul and Dallas are closer, but the Gladiators and the Shock are probably going to be the best game series out of day 4. In my mind. I mean, obviously it won't be Houston versus Boston, because we all know my feelings on Boston right now.
So with that being said, that is the Season 2 Week 1 lineup. A lot of good matches to be played there. And, you and I are both in the same boat. We are just waiting with bated breath to figure out what the road games is actually going to mean. We need to know more. Don't just leave us hanging like that. Overwatch League. There's a lot of unknowns. Same with...
You're running out of time to tell us this stuff.
Same with Fantasy Overwatch League. Are we going to have it on OverwatchLeague.com? We don't know. What is going on? They need to get...
We will have Overwatch Fantasy on at least one site.
That's all that we know right now. Hopefully, we'll have multiple options for some people.
Hopefully multiple, but, if they're smart, they will bring fantasy sports onto the Overwatch League site.
Mm-hmm.
If they're smart. Football... How do I put this right? Fantasy football is more popular than actual football. It is.
Yeah.
more people play probably fantasy football than are. Let's sit down and watch football. Like, it's a fact. Like, football wouldn't be where it is right now without fantasy. You have to embrace fantasy sports if you're starting anything. So if Overwatch League is smart, they're going to implement a fantasy site or fantasy stats and stuff like that onto their site. But that's a whole different argument for a whole different day and a whole different podcast.
that was
subtle.
That was very subtle. Because that's gonna be a thing. We'll have more on that later. Maybe not tonight, but at some other time. But anyways, let's shift gears into our main discussion, and this is gonna continue the Overwatch League talk because, as I said at the start of the show, there's been a plethora of information getting dropped, and we had, outside of Washington, which we already covered, we had 2 other expansion team roster / brand reveals. Now, technically, we already know one of these brands prior, but now we have the entire roster for the Chengdu Hunters. So this announcement basically came after they announced all their coaching staff here this last week, and they basically announced different components of the roster based on the role on the team. So they started off by announcing the support line of Kyo, Gary, and Yveltal, and Kyo comes from Team CC, which is out of Contenders China. He is, that was a Shanghai Dragons Academy team. You have Gary, who played for Lucky Future, also Contenders China, which is the sister team of Lucky Future Zenith. And then you have Yveltal, who had played for Lingan Esports, again, out of Contenders China. And you'll notice a theme as I'm talking about this team, because a lot of them come from China. So looking at their tank line, they have Amain, who played as Vanessa for Moss 7 Club. You have Leityun, who last played for Team CC, and before that, he was on a pretty prominent team in China, which I'll touch up on here in just a minute. And they also have Elsa, who was on Lingan Esports in both Contenders China seasons, both Season 1 and Season 2. And then rounding out the roster, we have the DPS core, starting with Jimu, who played for Moss 7 Club. You have Bacon Jack, who is a Taiwanese player who played on Flash Wolves, where he had played under the Chengdu assistant coach Ray. And he kind of took a break from Overwatch and hasn't played competitive since 2017, which is something I noted earlier. And then you have Yang Zhao Lon, who also hasn't played on a pro team in 2018, and last played DPS on the team that I was hinting at, Miraculous Youngster. Okay, now, let's circle back a bit. Season 1, Overwatch League, there was a lot of talk about Shanghai before the season even started, in regards to who they selected on their Overwatch League roster. A lot of people were up in arms because there was no presence of Miraculous Youngster, who at the time were the best team in China. This was a team that was beating Korean teams consistently, that basically just ran shot through the entire region of China, and then while some of their players were too young to get signed, you had other players that could have been signed and were eligible to play in Season 1, and that didn't happen. Whether it was because of, whoever was, in their management, whether there was, some biasness towards LGD Gaming, because that's kind of where their management came from. Whatever have you, there was a lot of people that were upset that MY were not part of Shanghai. So for me, this is very interesting, because now you basically have components from that roster on a Chinese roster, plus Bacon Jack out of Taiwan. So this is the only Overwatch League team that has more than 2 Chinese players on their roster. So it's kind of like this redemption arc for the Miraculous Youngster players. But at the same time, you look at this roster and you just kind of shake your head. This, to me, feels like Shanghai Dragons 0.5. And I'm not going to say I don't like the fact that there are MY players on this roster, but to sign players that haven't played at the competitive level in over a year is a big question mark for me. More so than ZachaREEE maybe playing a role that he hasn't in a year. Like, a lot of people just don't realize that. And it is a major concern for me. Like, this is not a standout roster, and if I'm going to rank them, I think the Hunters are bottom of the barrel going into Season 2.
Yeah. Now, to quote my favorite Disney movie that is named Frozen, you need to let it go. Just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's not going to be the last Elsa Frozen remake regarding this team. I was just trying to figure out a way to
work it in.
To work that in there. But, you know, the cold never bothered me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, yes, got two of them in there. No, it's a massive concern. Like, you take a year off. Like, obviously they're playing. They're not playing professionally, but they're still playing over that year.
One of them was playing PUBG for a year.
Okay, no one really plays PUBG.
Well, except that one person.
Yeah. But I mean, like, if you're a professional FPS player, you kind of have the skills. You just need to get reacclimated. Now, hopefully, they took long enough for him to get back into the game, and for him to practice and scrim to get back to his old self. Again, that's just looking on the bright side of it. The realistic side is this team is gonna be real bad. Real bad. Like, they could be it's between them and Boston for the worst team in the league for me. I gave it to Boston just because I don't like the way they treat their players and act and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you never know. These, like you said, they were the top Chinese team when Shanghai first announced their this team roster. Like, this should have been the roster they had last year, and they just kind of chose not to do it, you know, outside of age. And they could surprise people. We've been surprised before in Overwatch League. We don't know. I'm just not betting on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, to an extent, like, you can even look back at the World Cup and how well China did, this year. Like, there's a lot of people that aren't familiar with the Chinese scene, as opposed to some other people out there. So, you know, there is a lot of, like, talent out in China that we just aren't familiar with. Now, that being said, like, out of the Chinese region, like, you know, they didn't get Eileen, they didn't get Gu Shui, they didn't get some of these bigger names out of the region, which kind of puts them at a lower level as opposed to some of their counterparts.
Like, come on, Eileen? You really had to bring that up? I'm on fire tonight. Sorry, I had to go there. So no, when a lot of casual Overwatch League fans think of Chinese Overwatch players, they think Shanghai is the top tier. Like, the players that were on Shanghai were the top tier, and they don't realize, like you said, that wasn't the case. They don't realize that all these players out there from China is actually a legit scene. And they are about to see the full force of the Chinese Overwatch scene come into Overwatch League. And I don't think really anybody knows how to expect what's going to happen. Just like nobody really expected China to be in the finals of the World Cup, except the certain host of Heroes Never Die. This guy.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's one of those things, a different meta. You brought it up in Overwatch League Network. Like, how will the Chinese meta work into the normal meta? Whereas in the Chinese meta, you see a lot of like McCree.
Mm-hmm.
And now McCree against Goats is just horrible. Like, McCree versus Goats is just a no-go. And how will the Chinese meta fit into this meta? Like, it's weird to think that, like, different regions have different metas, but it's literally in every game like that. Like, Hearthstone is an example. Like, it's a card game. It's a legit, just everyone has the exact same cards. Well, there's a Chinese meta, and then there's a Western meta. In Hearthstone, of all things. Same thing goes for Overwatch. There's a Chinese meta, and then there's, you know, the Western culture meta. And, you know, the Korean players tend to play more of a Western meta,
Well, okay,
or
hold on.
we play more of a Korean meta.
Quick side note on Korea. They also have kind of like that quick play meta where they do 4 DPS solo support and solo tank. We've seen that too. I want to throw that in there.
But like, it's just one of those things where the Chinese culture, Chinese gaming scene has always been different.
Right.
So we don't know how they're going to come in. They could come in and just steamroll people with their comps, and people just not be ready for it. Like if stage 1 they came through and they steamrolled people, and everyone's like, "What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?" I would be shocked, but not surprised. Whereas by stage 2, then people have them figured out. Because, like you said, this is the only almost pure Chinese team out there. So if anyone's going to bring the Chinese meta into Overwatch League meta, it's going to be this team, and that could throw people for a loop. But like, that's strictly looking on the high end bright side of things. Like, I still think this is bottom 2 teams, but like on the super high end bright side, they could shock some people.
Yeah, so I do have a couple other notes that I do want to bring up. For one, all of the players that are on this roster speak Mandarin. So that's important to note. Like, they're not going to have an issue with communication, which was one of the downfalls of the Shanghai Dragons in season... One of the many downfalls of the Shanghai Dragons in Season 1. The other is there was another player out there that was linked to this roster, Silkthread, formerly of the LA Gladiators, who was signed to this team, but they ended up terminating his contract because he retired from professional Overwatch. So had Silkthread been on this team, maybe we wouldn't be coming down as hard as we are on them.
No, we would.
Like, it still would have been to an extent, but it wouldn't have been as severe. But like, that would have at least been an Overwatch League presence on this team. Someone that, like, if you look back at the Gladiators Season 1, something that they did better than a lot of other teams was substitutions. You know, they did very well working everyone that were on their roster into the rotation, and it was very fluid. So he definitely could have helped with that and kind of been the vocal leader of this team just due to his experience in the Overwatch League, but they don't have that. So, like, this for me is like the biggest question mark out of all of the Overwatch League teams going into Season 2. And, you know, like, I don't want this to be another case of the Shanghai Dragons. Like, that's my biggest concern. And, like, if they don't perform well, if this is going to be another case where a Chinese team isn't going to do so hot, it's definitely going to be a big blow to their region. But hey, they at least have 4 opportunities to get it right. Eventually someone's going to get it right, whether it's from a marketing standpoint with, you know, the finger bangs. They got that down pat. Like, they're 100% on board. They have the community support with that. But we just need to see one of these 4 teams really perform. And I don't think this is going to be the team to do it.
No. 100% no.
With that being said, we do have one other team that I purposely saved for last for obvious reasons. No biasness at all.
What?
A little bit. And that is Vancouver, the big unknown. You know, the only team that wasn't brand leaked ahead of time. Just so happens that the roster consists entirely of Runaway, much to everyone's surprise. Well, I mean, there is Runaway, right? And then you also have Rappel, who we'll talk about here in a second. So Vancouver's Overwatch League team will be going by Vancouver Titans. We don't get the hashtag Vancougars like I was hoping for. But I have a quick story. I need to bring this up again.
Yes.
So there is someone that I talk to quite a lot on social media who I am in a podcast planning with in regards to the Titans, who some of you may know, because I've been guessing on her podcast here within the past couple of weeks, that being Malkari. So, Malkari was at the Vancouver event during the reveal, and she had this devious subplot where she ended up taking the Vancouver Titans social media handle on Twitter, to the point where they basically did the same thing and then just added an underscore at the end. And she basically immediately DM'd me on Twitter, told me this, you know, admitted her guilt, And I have been trolling her. Like, there was a 24-hour period where I just trolled her nonstop, where I was sending her gifts of, like, a box of shame, like, I was sending her anything that had to do with, like, I know what you did, things like that. And it was just one of those moments where I haven't felt so much shame in one of my friends for doing something, to the point where I was like, you need to go up to our mom, Flowervin, who was there with Runaway. Go figure, the thing that we were hinted at. Oh, yeah, Flowervin went someplace cold. I wonder where that is going to be. It was with Runaway in Vancouver. I told her to go apologize. She did not, in fact, do that. But she did purchase, a good amount of Vancouver gear, which is available to purchase on vanbase.ca. By the way, you can go get some Vancouver Titans gear. But, like, it was just, like, one of those moments where I couldn't believe that a friend of mine would do such a thing as a Vancouver native, nonetheless.
I mean, I have one question. I'm just going to bring this up. What does it feel like? What does it feel like to have the team you're cheering for hate you? I mean, it's an honest question. Like, they had to change their whole social media because of you.
Mm-hmm.
All these people. Someone probably had to work overtime on a Friday night and had to miss dinner with their children trying to change the social media presence that you stole from under them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm done making her feel bad.
So, with that being said, it is worth noting, Vancouver did change their social media stuff to something that...
Because of Malkari.
Because of Malkari, that had nothing to do with OW Titans or anything like that. So they're good on that front. Like, now she feels like a load has been taken off of her shoulder. But, like, I had to bring it up because, like, when it comes to throwing shade at people and just, poking fun at people that I am well aware of and I'm good friends with, I am not going to hold back. I don't care who you are. But anyways, I'll be talking to her about a Vancouver Titans focus podcast later on tonight when I interview her for Overwatch Recall. But looking at this roster, they announced it at the Vancouver Canucks game when they faced the Dallas Stars. And as I mentioned, Runaway basically added Element, Mystic, Flex Support, Repel to kind of like round out this roster. So as for the Titans, they brought back the blue and green color scheme, which is shared with the Vancouver Canucks. And the logo draws from the Pacific Northwest monster Bigfoot, or a Yeti, whatever you want to describe it as. And they have Harsha, who was an analyst for the San Francisco Shock, joining the team as an assistant coach. And then, you have Runaway. This is a team that finished in first place in Contenders Korea Season 2, defeating Kondu Panthera, who were also completely signed to the Overwatch League, which was an epic 8-map grand finals last season. So, going over the staff, you have Pajin, who was a head coach who worked with Fusion University. You have Yane One, who is an assistant coach who worked with Runaway, and then you have Harsha. And then you have basically the entire Runaway roster, so you have DPS, you have Hoxel, Hureg, who played in the Overwatch League in Season 1 with the Spitfire. He got released, and then he went to play for Runaway. You have Minsu, who is really the true flex player on this, this overall roster. You have Stitch. Support line, you have Slime, Twilight, and Repel, with your tanks being Bumper and Janu. So, all in all, like, this has been a team that I have followed pretty much since inception, finally getting their chance in the Overwatch League. I am absolutely stoked. If you listen to Overwatch League Network, you would know that all of the hosts on OTVLN are massive Runaway fanboys. So, I'm sorry, you're going to get biasness on both accounts, guys. It's just going to happen. And I'm sure the Titans podcast, whatever it may be named, I already told Malkari that Are You Yeti ? Is a deal breaker for me. Like, if that's not the name of it, I'm done. That's not actually the case. We're still going to be talking about it.
You could call it Bumper. I hardly knew her. No?
Yeah, we could do that. So all in all, like, I like the colors. I do like that the green is a bit more brighter. But, you have a lot of people that are like, oh, that's just the Seahawks. Like, people aren't seeing it as, like, the Canucks colors. They're just seeing it
Yeah.
as Seattle, which is kind of a little bit conflicting. But I want to get your thoughts on the brand, the roster, and then, we'll wrap up things for the night.
All right. So Negative Nancy is actually pretty happy with almost everything they did. Obviously, great team. Probably the best expansion team out there.
Yes.
Outside of Finger Bangs, probably being the second closest. Like the only one, if you any form of an argument for a team, Finger Bangs would be the team that you could make an argument for. No other teams, but I still think Vancouver's better. I actually like the team name. I like the logo. I like the Yeti. The colors are good for me. Good-ish. I like that they went from to a lighter green than what was leaked. The only thing is, I wish they would have gone for a lighter blue.
Okay.
I think a lighter blue would have given it a little better, a non-Seattle Seahawks vibe. I think a lighter blue, like a powder blue, would have done, like our sky blue or something like that, would have done great with this. And that's very nitpicky. In regards to this, part of me wants the Vancouver Titans like logo, the Yeti logo, to be almost like a Winston. They could have done it closer to Winston. That could have been something cool, but I don't know if Overwatch League would have wanted them to have like the logo be almost one of the characters, even though obviously the character won't go anywhere. Like if you could have done a green and blue Winston face, I think that would have been a lot cooler. But I mean, there's probably the Overwatch League probably didn't want them to do that. But yeah, it was great. The reveal was great. They really did a great job of implementing it more into mainstream sports by announcing the team at an NHL game, because Overwatch League is now more popular than the NHL. Come at me. I'm sorry, like it just is. But it's one of those things where they did everything right. Now they just have to perform. And I'm very cautious because I've been hurt before.
Right, with established rosters.
Of established rosters, and I've brought this up numerous times. They may be a little different than previous ones because they came together under like the Overwatch League rules, Overwatch Contenders, as something like that, instead of like pre-Overwatch League rules, where these bigger teams came, like the Mayhem did, Seoul did, stuff like that. Like, before the Overwatch League, it was kind of like okay, well, we're just going to put the best teams together, and then we're going to pick and choose where we're going to play, and so on and so forth. This was more organized. And this team came together under a more organized structure. And it was like, it's not like it was just you went to the ladder and took the best players you could find. This was more of we are recruiting and we are building a team based on the Overwatch League. So they have a better chance than most. So I will give them that benefit of the doubt. But I still hope the game of stage one for me is going to be Finger Bangs versus Vancouver. Because I think that will be like the battle of the two best expansion teams. And whoever wins that is going to be the best expansion team to come out this year. So that's going to be the big one. And I'm pretty sure fighting week.
So to wrap up the Titans talk, like there's a couple of things to know about Runaway. Basically, this was a team that did not have an organization. They were basically like unsigned. You had Runner and Flowervin, the mom and dad of the team. And this is a team that kind of flourished throughout several different metas when they were together as a team. And they have a lot of experience against teams that were, built around, certain cores that transitioned to the Overwatch League, like Kondu Panthera, like GC Busan, like Lunatic High, like Luxury Watch, that being like, Seoul Dynasty, London Spitfire, New York Excelsior. So they've played these teams in the past, and they're coming in to a meta. Well, let's assume the meta stays. Like, they were hands down the best GOATS team in Korea. And, calling to Panthera, they were definitely neck and neck with them, which is why that Shanghai Vancouver game is going to be so important to me. But I really love the fact that during the reveal day, that they put so much value into the videos that they did. They basically had everyone on that roster have a fair amount of camera time, and it really allowed the viewers to get to know this team and see that togetherness aspect, that family value that this team has always kind of been built around. And for me, it kind of hurts that Runner and Flowervin aren't directly involved with Runaway as a venture into the Overwatch League. They're still gonna be with the Runaway roster in Contenders Korea. So, for me, that's something that as a fan, that does worry me a little bit to see them kind of under the wing of a different coaching staff. So having Yan 1 there is absolutely crucial. But at the end of the day, I'm still going to be a soulmate, because I grew up with Apex as the primary competitive Overwatch tournament that I would tune into. But Vancouver is definitely gonna be a team that I'm gonna follow through and through. And I've already ordered merchandise. As soon as I saw it available, I ordered my $31 USD blue and green Titans t-shirt. Which is gonna get shipped from Canada because it's a Canadian one. And I posted the link if you want to support the Titans. You can click on that, see what merch they have. But this is going to be the other team that I follow the closest outside of the Dynasty. And it's cool to having followed a team of really at the start being potential unknowns to now being in the Overwatch League. It's still a very surreal thing. So I can't wait to see how they do. I hope that fan base from Runaway is going to carry through to the Overwatch League, which I'm sure it is. Mm-hmm. But in regards to expansion teams, they have the highest expectations set on them because of their history, because of what they're coming off of. When it comes to speak of the devil, there's Melkari right now. They're going to have the highest expectations set on them just due to the success, due to how they have done as a team. And this is a team that, at one point, was almost relegated out of Contenders because they finished 8th through 12th. And then going into Season 3, they won the whole thing. This is a team... This is a team that has stood the test of time in Korea, have been a top team throughout different metas, and I just hope they don't cave underneath that pressure. But I'm feeling very confident as opposed to some of these other teams that are expansion teams. So I'm gonna be a fan for life through and through. I'll still be wearing pink and blue to support the new Runaway roster in Contenders.
So you're sporting the finger banks.
No. See, my whole thing. Blue. That was no. We're not going through this. But I'm not gonna be throwing shade at the Spark for taking Runaway's colors again. But I'm fully invested, and I just hope that the Runaway roster, including Repel from Element Mystic, can make a playoff run. Because if we're looking at the playoff picture in regards to the expansion teams, Runaway is going to have the best shot at doing it. It's just a matter of where they're going to fit in the grander scheme of things. So if you're looking for a potential candidate to make a deep run that has been tested quite a bit in the past, this is the team.
Yeah, you could also be looking at the new Dallas Fuel. You have to
Dynasty in that matter.
We've had these dominant teams coming into Overwatch League come in and then just suck. They just suck. So it could be one of the other. If I was a betting man and I am, they will be more middle of the roster. I think they're going to be in like the 6 to 8 range when all things are broken down, and which for an expansion team is phenomenal because they don't have the same experience that the Overwatch League players have. So the 6 to 8 I think is a very reasonable thing for them. But like I said, we are going to have to come up with a bet for when they play the Spark.
The Spark and
like
Titans.
Yeah, we're going to have to come up with something.
Okay.
I mean, we would include Melikari on it, but she'd probably just ruin it for another expansion team.
Possibly. He's just trolling you, Matt. Don't listen to him. Don't take him seriously. You know where I come from. It's just out of place of love.
Yes. And Tyler in chat said they both kind of took Florida's colors because Florida, Miami Vice colors. Miami Vice came out before Overwatch League Network. Or Overwatch League. I always call it the Overwatch League.
Okay, so quick side note, you're not the only one that does that.
All right, so Miami Vice came out before. So, technically they stole the colors from someone. So I believe the colors truly belong to Florida Mayhem. Just saying. Technicality. Right there.
So with that being said, we're past that 2-hour point. Let's close out the show for tonight. So the best way to help us out, guys, is honestly, just go on to iTunes, leave us a positive review. If you like what you hear, be sure to, actually write out a review. I mean, a 5-star review is good either way, but we always like to touch base with you guys and see, maybe areas that we can improve in, things like that, or what you really like, whether it is Edinar's jabs at Canada, or, there only being one road in Canada, or, just our playfulness when it comes to trolling friends, all of that good stuff. We love to hear from you. We do have Overwatch Recall, which has expanded coverage and content. Now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday releases. Someone I'm interviewing tonight is actually in the chat right now. And you can find that on Twitter at OW Recall. We're still doing, our Sunday night episodic listings of all the Overwatch podcasts out there. So be sure to check that out. You can find the podcast directory on our website. And then you can find the weekly podcast listings also on the website. All of that is there for you to consume. I want to say, even during, the holiday week for, Thanksgiving, there were still, 23 releases, which was absolutely mind-boggling to me. That was a lot more than I was expecting, because normally there's a huge dip. But definitely check that out. Check out the interviews I've been doing. I've been talking to a ton of different content creators, including casters, people that are growing on YouTube. I have an interview that's dropping this Friday with a freelance coach, which was pretty awesome. So keep up with that, because there's a lot of great content for you guys to consume. But Edinar, we have a number of different ways where our listeners and viewers can find us. So why don't you let them know where they can reach us at?
All right. Well, you can reach us through email at HNDOverwatch. You can reach us on Twitter at HNDOverwatch. We do have a website at owlnshow.com. We are on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show, which we're presently on. We are a Twitch affiliate, so you can come support the show by subscribing to our Twitch channel and unlock our network emoticons. So thanks again to everyone who's been watching our show in the chat. If you'd like to catch us live, we broadcast 2 nights a week. So Overwatch League Network is Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. Heroes Never Die. This show is at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams will be held on Thursdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Even though I say that every week, I forget. And I have to message Totem and Spider when they're going to be streaming. Mm-hmm. And then you can talk to us on discord.me/OWLN show. And then we have YouTube, youtube.com/Overwatch League Network, where we are uploading all sorts of fun stuff and all sorts of interviews and all sorts of new stuff. So definitely go check that out over there. You can reach me on Twitter at Edinar Overwatch. Totem, where can they find you at?
Well, I am over on Twitter, usually trolling Melkari in DMs at Totally Drunk CTR. And of course, guys, in regards to our YouTube, like, yes, we do have all our Overwatch Recall interviews being uploaded there on day of release. We also have Spider's Ash video that was posted not too long ago, so check that out. So, like, now you can definitely expect at least bare minimum 3 weekly releases, at least with Overwatch Recall on the YouTube. Obviously, like, some of the other stuff, like some of the, like, tips and tricks, things like that, event stuff, hero-specific stuff, maybe even map-specific, depending on if there's any changes, that's not going to be as frequent. So, you know, if you're not, definitely go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll have a ton more content for you to consume. But with that being said, guys, it's about time to get the heck out of here. Again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. This has been episode 138 of Heroes Never Die. I am your host, Totally Drunk, joined, as per usual, by my co-host, Adonar, who supports the rival pink and blue team.
I'm going to end every show now with
finger bangs? Okay.
Finger bangs.
So, with that, guys, we will see you back maybe tomorrow for our host stream, which I will be doing. Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to Heroes Never Die. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HND Overwatch and join us on Discord at discord.me/OWLN show.